Even though that my role as a chief investment officer, the topic that I want to share with you today is more like the job of an architect, because we're going to discuss how a hedge fund can be tokenized, because it's even though the hedge fund is one of the most understood concepts in this country, when we talk about tokenizing asset, the first thing that comes to our mind is real estate, for example. So we follow most of the rules, but they're a little bit different. So I want to start by 30 seconds about this. I'm a CPA in the first career, but I thought that I needed to study law because the financial market needed that skill to be successful. So, funny story, I was halfway my law degree in Sydney, and I wanted to practice something different. I didn't want to compete against these traditional attorneys in family law, in property law. So back in 2015, I Googled innovative areas of law to practice. And back then, Google was so wrong and bring me back smart contracts. So I thought initially, so 2015, I thought, okay, this is contract law in a smart way. And that night, what I discovered, Ethereum, I discovered Bitcoin. Well, I discovered pretty much the entire world of cryptocurrencies. And since then, I haven't looked back. So when I started researching Ethereum, the first thing that appears in the Ethereum webpage back then was a message written by Gavin Woods, who's now the founder of Polkadot. And he said, people, this is in beta. We're not responsible for what could happen to your computer, so expect dragons. That message hit hard on me, and I said, okay, I got a finance background, now I got sort of the legal, but we are driving into a world that IBM or EDS is not coming to rescue us. So I have to understand the technology, I have to learn Solidity. So to live and breathe in this world, you pretty much need to have a sound background in finance, some legal, we'll see that, and obviously a lot of technology. So that was part of the journey here. So when I jumped this project, this hedge fund, the founder asked me for 4 goals, 4 objectives. So we have to be crypto. We don't want to be the typical fund that invests in an asset allocation and go sailing in Biscayne Bay for a year and then come back in November to see how things going. We want to be monitoring the performance, changing the allocations. We want to be regulated, fully regulated, and we want to be tokenized. So okay, let's start with the journey. Regulation. We went shopping pretty much for a jurisdiction to be regulated. And we found this little territory inside Spain called Gibraltar. It's a British territory, and they have some interesting features that appeal off to me. So in the middle, you will see an extract of the PwC report of 2021, where they talk about the hedge fund, the crypto hedge fund industry. And if you see in the top, you will see that where the preferred jurisdictions. You will see, obviously, the United States. You will see the Cayman Island, for the same reason that the United States is pretty much a leader in this market. But you see the Gibraltar is next. And also, you see on the bottom that one of the preferred jurisdictions for fund managers is Gibraltar. And there is a reason for that. The reasons are in that side, and I will explain. The legislation. They have a product, a regulatory product that says that Gibraltar want to be at the forefront of the distributed ledger technology. So they want to alert crypto businesses to the territory. They also have a very smart regulatory framework for hedge funds. Of course, they have the retail framework, which is obviously, as we know, very hard, very complicated, lengthy. But also they have the experienced investor fund framework, which is, I would say, that's the equivalent of the accredited investor definition here in the United States. The only difference, which is a big difference, is that to be classified as an experienced investor in Gibraltar, there is like 20 subcategories that, as long as you meet one of them, you are an experienced investor. And one of them is that if you invest 100,000 euros, you are already an experienced investor in Gibraltar. They don't take into account the fact that that's probably, if an investor invests that amount, that's probably the only money that they have, which is interesting. But the only thing you have to prove is that they invest 100,000 euros in you. So there is no letter from the attorneys, no letter from the CPAs. You just have to prove that they trust you, that amount of money. So I'd say, okay, that's an interesting pathway for us. And then we continue the conversations with the regulator. Obviously, another interesting topic in Gibraltar is the quality of the service providers. As we know, in the hedge fund industry, we need fund administrators, we know we need custodians, we need auditors, we need a whole suite of professionals that if they resign the jurisdiction and they understand the industry, it's very positive for us. Well, last, that's just an example of to be regulated by the Gibraltar Financial Service Commission, you really have to have in place a strong network of service providers, fund administrator, RSM, external auditors, BDO, legal advisors, institutional custodian framework, so investment banks, you name it. So let's now get into the topic of the tokenization. So we already know that we wanted to create a crypto fund in an alpha fashion. We are now fully regulated. So now let's tokenize the hedge fund. We got investor. Remember, we're talking investors in Gibraltar and Europe. Okay, so they send the subscription to us. We invest the money in a diversified crypto portfolio, and then we issue a token that's fully backed by our portfolio. Okay, and then the token flows back to the investor. In Gibraltar, our tokenized platform is Tokeny. They're based in Luxembourg, and they have the license to help us up there with that business. That's fine. But then we came with another hurdle that, okay, we don't want to miss the pretty much 52% of the market share of investors in the world, which is the United States. There is a little issue that U.S. investors cannot, well, should not invest directly in foreign products because they could be caught in the passive foreign investment regulation. So there was a very easy fix to that. And they say in Gibraltar, what's the problem with that? So, well, the problem is that if they do that, they could be hit with a tax bill of 47%. And they say, well, that's what we're paying here in Europe, so that's normal. I said, well, that's fine, but we don't do that here. So that's something that we have to work through. So very easy. We have the same framework, so we create a feeder fund. So we established the Gibraltar fund as a master fund where everything happens, and we established a feeder fund in Delaware. So now we have a U.S. accredited investors investing in the feeder fund, and the only strategy in the feeder fund is to feed those subscription monies into the master fund and that. So in turns, in Gibraltar, we invest those money into the same portfolio, so we don't discriminate. We don't have a portfolio in Delaware, a portfolio in Gibraltar. We have one for efficient reasons. And obviously, this the portfolio is backs the token, the security token that have been issued. However, the Delaware fund, the only things they do is just feed the funds to Gibraltar and buy the Gibraltar tokens. So those money are sent to the Gibraltar fund, okay? And those tokens and those value form a portfolio that backs the US version of our security. So now it's where Vertalo is helping us. So we're tokenized in Gibraltar with Tokeny, and we're tokenized here in the United States with Vertalo. And obviously the US version of our securities flow into our US investors. We'll talk later on in the presentation that, as you can see, the token at Gibraltar level is calculated, is backed by net asset value. The token in the United States sort of calculated by the net asset value, just including some operating expenses here in the United States. And as you can see, when we're moving to the secondary market, we are secondary floating. People said, well, there is an opportunity for arbitrage here. So yes, it could be. It could be. So that's interesting. So it's working relatively well. It's complex, but we have the fund administrator in Gibraltar, RSM, which is one of the largest accounting firms in the world, working closely with Sudranian Fund Services here in the US, that they have an experience of more than 700 funds here in the United States as a fund manager, and they're working really closely just to make sure that everything reconciles. So again, the importance of having the right service provider is paramount here, because that's not a simple business. So there are some complexities, not very complex, but that requires some attention. So that's part of the tokenization process. I want to invest a little bit of time talking about some alpha sources in the management of this portfolio. Again, no solicitation, no investment advice, just simply sharing some ideas that we're doing in the day-to-day and the fun. I personally consider diversification not only an obvious strategy for risk minimization and risk management, but also we consider diversification as an alpha source. Even though the crypto world tend to move in a similar fashion where Bitcoin goes up or goes down, some tokens behave in a very different way. So now having, for example, layer 2s, and now having alternative platforms such Avalanche, so Polkadot, some Solana, that opens the gate for some arbitrage strategies, because the analogy I use for Ethereum is like the US one. It's a big highway that everyone wants to run or go through them, but it gets congested, so it gets jammed, and when that happens, it gets slow, the fees are really high, and when that happens, people tend to look elsewhere, either layer 2 or other alternatives, and that has some impacts in the price of the token. So the gaming industry is that forms that changed obviously because it's an active portfolio, but at the moment it's around 1/3 of our portfolio. A few things. We're talking about $1 trillion economy here, but most importantly, we're talking about 2 billion users already. I'm not saying that those 2 billion users are already using games in the blockchain world, but they are participating in the gaming industry. So 2 billion people is just taking the population of the United States, Canada, Western Europe, United Kingdom, and Australia, and multiply by 2. Okay? So that's a huge impact. We're participating in the market, so we want to be the fund of choice for that. And okay, little bit of strategy. When it comes to a game, we purchase the tokens of the games, we purchase the NFTs that represent the assets, and also we sponsor teams. Those teams are experts in the game. They give us advice. You have to buy that spaceship, that fuel, those weapons, and then you have to allow us to use it. So we put the hours, we put the effort, and then we share the profit 50-50. So that's a very lucrative way. We run a social trend desk. Obviously, we monitor the sentiment of 200 tokens. Obviously, when we see a spike and a jump in either euphoria or panic, we act accordingly. And obviously, just to finish this, the main advantage for that is that if we have a hedge fund that's fully tokenized, from the investor point of view, is the following. That's the idea. That's not without challenge. We have been talking about that for the last day and a half. But you have a token that floats in an alternative trading system, which underlying strategy, it's a hedge fund strategy. So when we talk about hedge fund, we usually talk about locked periods of 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. So here, the intention of the idea of the design is just having a hedge fund that could float 24/7 in crypto markets. And if we don't have that strategy, we run the business very well. We invest the monies from the investors. We double in 6 months, but then the investor says, "So Carlos, thank you very much, but I want my redemption because I want to buy X property in Florida." I say, "Fair enough. Give us a few days." But if that happens, the market may have a different idea. So I may face the situation that I have to sell a large position in a suboptimal timing. But if things work our way, because I think that we're all in the same boat, what could happen is that investor could log into a platform that they can find another investor interested in buying the security, and then following the protocols of transfer agent and following all the regulation, they can interact with each other. And I will get a report from my transfer agent saying that investor A sold X shares or tokens to investor B, and my portfolio will be untouched. And that's premium from the asset manager point of view. And just to finish, I'll say some thoughts. We talk about in the regulatory panel of Fireside Chat, they said that the government is not going away. It's true, it's not going away, but in the future, those who are running the government are going to belong to different demographic. So in 20 years' time, the next CEOs, the next bankers, the next regulator, the next politicians, the next senators are going to belong to a generation that have been growing, understanding crypto as a superior form of money. And obviously, that will have an impact in the policy that they're making. So the final line it says that you can pretty much stop crypto now because you can't stop nature. So that's with that thought, I'll finish the presentation. Thank you. Just, yeah, if there are any questions from the audience, I'm happy to take it. Yeah, sure.
How long until you think the AAA gaming studios will go into home watch?
Obviously, I can't disclose that, but that will be very soon. Actually, we are about to release a sponsorship in a Web2 protocol. They are making the jump into the space, and yeah, they have been in close communication with us in the last 3 months, so we're about to finish that. So the whole idea is just to working with Web2 gamers is that if we have to explain crypto, nonsense, Merkle trees to someone in the street, it's a big jump that we're asking to do. It's a big jump of faith. But if we're talking to people that are used to game the Web2 world, they know about what is a skin, they know what is a token, so they understand some concepts, and moving them from there to where we wanted to do, or to live, is not that hard. So it's a worth investing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, of course. And well, obviously, I will be the rest of the afternoon. I will be here tomorrow. So thank you so much for your attention.